Good afternoon and good morning. Thank you for joining us for this webinar on what is new with LDK 7.5. My name is Ryan Weidman, Senior Field Marketing Specialist with Gemalto Software Monetization Department, and I will be your moderator. Today, Rafi will discuss the new features of LDK 7.5 and walk us through a live demonstration. As a reminder, you are all muted. We invite you to submit your questions via the chat box. Following the demo, there will be a Q&A session to address your questions. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce and hand over the presentation to Rafi Pinto, Senior Pre-Sales Consultant with Gemalto Software Monetization Department. Rafi?
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. So, hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Rafi. As Ryan introduced me, I'm a Senior Pre-Sales Consultant with Gemalto. Been in the company for quite a while, almost 9 years. So today I'm going to present what's new in LDK 7.5. Essentially, I presume that all the people that are here on the session, they are familiar or a little bit familiar with LDK and the new version. So to people who are not familiar, Sentinel LDK, as you probably know, is a complete out-of-the-box software protection, licensing, entitlement, and management solution. And it also, Gemalto received a lot of awards about the product from Frost & Sullivan. Just to remind everyone a little bit about LDK, let me just move this a little bit. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so just to remind everyone a little bit on what is LDK. As I said, LDK is an out-of-the-box software protection, licensing, and entitlement management system. Today we're going to discuss mainly what are the new features in EMS and the 7.5 version. The 7.5 version was actually released last year around November time. Our engineering are now working also on a new version, the 7.6. I believe that it's going to be released in a couple of months time frame. So a little bit about the features of LDK, as you all probably know it. You know that the LDK has the protect once, deliver many philosophy, which means that you protect your binaries once and you embed your features that you want to license, and then you can deliver many bundles of products and many licensing schemes that you want later on to the market without going back and changing the binaries and changing the code. LDK supports, as you probably all know, what we call cross-locking, which means that you can enable licensing enforcement either with locking to a certain hardware key, the Sentinel HL keys, or to software-based keys, as we're going to discuss today, or cloud-based even. In terms of security, you know that LDK is award-winning security. It has a lot of security features that protects your application against reverse engineering, against tampering, and against unauthorized use. One of the nice features about it is features like envelope, features like secure communication, embedding the API. So in terms of security, it's a very, very secure product. One thing I want to touch based on is Sentinel LDK, as you know, has a web-based interface which is called EMS. That's the Entitlement Management System. It's a kind of you can see it as a kind of a CRM of license management that gives you a way to define those licenses, those features, the product bundles, and the entitlements that you want to sell, as well as see reports and insight of usage of how and the behavior of how your customers are using the licenses that you are selling them. Okay, so that's kind of a overview on the solutions. Again, three main pillars of LDK solutions. The first pillar is the security and protection, mainly focusing on protecting and securing your application, protecting your devices and IP against reverse engineering, and that's the security part. In terms of licensing and usage, LDK makes sure that you have all sorts of licensing features, if it's a subscription, time-based, perpetual, etc., and allows you to use those licenses and also track usage and see those licensing and reports. The third pillar is the entitlement management system. It's the system where you manage, you define all your licensing operations, whether it's an on-prem or cloud or embedded software. Everything is tracked there, and you can provision everything there, and you can track and see reports on how your customers are using those entitlements. We also have a consulting and services group that also facilitate and allows our customer base to help them with deploying or customizing our solution if needed. Okay, and also provide, of course, training and implementation consulting. So let's start diving on what we really wanted to start today is what's really new in LDK 7.5, and I will do a stop later on for questions and demo, but if we dive and see what are the main things or the top 6 list of what was added in 7.5 is LDK EMS, the entitlement management system, is now Java Applet free. That's a really great news because this is something that was actually bothering our customers for a long time. The previous versions only required to have a certain browser, mostly Internet Explorer, and it had to you had to install the Java applets in order to do things like checking in the key, activation, etc. So now we can see that modern browsers now don't have any Java applet support, for example, like Google Chrome, and this is why we've introduced this enhanced this feature, and I think you know, it's really great that now you don't have to you know, support the Java applets, and you don't have to be limited or bonded to a certain you know, browsers like Internet Explorer, for example. Okay, the second feature that was added in this version is that support for Android. So we've added support for LDK in Android, mainly in Intel CPUs, for HL and SLs, and also we've added native library support for Envelope. So we've also added support for Linux ARM, mainly for HL, SL, and API. We've added a really nice thing is a new scheme that allows and protects against virtual machine clone detection. This has something to do with the ability to actually clone a VM based on taking a snapshot and reverting to a previous snapshot, for example. The fifth feature is that we introduced in this version is that we introduced Runtimeless support for applications in Linux. Up until 7.5, we had that feature in Windows, but now it's been introduced also to Linux. And another really nice feature that was introduced is the dynamic memory management is now available to manage and to handle in EMS. We had this feature before, the dynamic memory management. We had that feature before, but this was handled only in the license generator API and not through LDK EMS. So essentially what I'm going to do is now is I'm going to dive into those new features and talk to them more in detail. Some other minor features that were added in this version, except for the top 6 that I was discussing before, is the feature 0 for the unlocked products, or what we call the trawler product, was a bit changed, and now it's easier to understand. There were some modifications on the SL-UserMode activation changes, and the activation of what we call the V-clock, the virtual clock license model, can now be reversed when the time battery is not working now. So you can always fall back to what we call a V-clock time-based license model in case the battery of the time key is not working. Okay, so these are the new features, and what I'm going to do now. Another thing that was supported a little bit more. So some new features that were added was also that the unlocked products, as I said, the trial now support the execution counts, but only through the license generator API. So up until now, you know, the unlocked products also only supported what we call time-based. You can create a trialware or unlocked product only limitation for 90 days, but now we support perpetual as well as execution counts. And other things that were added, pretty nice things, modifications to the API is the ability to consume more executions by using the HASP login scope call, which actually allows you to consume a seat or a license, but up to now it was only limited to one execution. So if you wanted to consume, let's say 100 or 1,000, you always had to do log in and log out, and now you can actually consume multiple execution by calling the HASP login scope with, let's say, 100 execution or 1,000. So the final feature that was added, the minor one, was that the admin API is now also supported also in Linux, Intel, as well as on Mac platforms. So essentially what I'm going to do now is going to dive into more the roots and explain a bit more about mainly the main features that were added in this version. Another point that I forgot to mention is that also there was added support for, in this version, to Microsoft Azure with Sentinel LDK. So having said that, let's kind of go and dive into the main features. And after some of the main features explanation, I'm going to do a quick demo, and then you will have a chance also to ask some questions after the demo. Okay, so let's talk about the Java Applet free EMS additional in LDK 7.5. I think that's a really great addition. And as I said before, the modern browsers like, for example, Google Chrome today are dropping the use of Java applets mainly for security reasons, and now most of the browsers do not make those Java applets run anymore. As before, LDK 7.4 and before had to run on Internet Explorer, for example, on browsers that support Java applets to perform all kinds of things like introducing the CVs, checking the key, activating, etc. So now we have a good news that now this is not needed anymore, and this was done by we introduced a new technology feature that enabled that, mainly in the admin, in the ACC, the Admin Control Center, that supports what we call the Java-less browsers, like Chrome, for example. The good news is that we have that now supporting for most of the browsers, but this is only, unfortunately, only in Windows platform. I believe that it will be introduced on the later versions also to Linux and to Mac OS system as well. So just to explain a little bit more, we have introduced a new configuration parameter. It was added to the Admin Control Center in LDK that actually enabled this option. But just saying that, the last point is that if your browser, for example, if you like using a browser that has support for Java applets, for example, if you like using Microsoft Internet Explorer, you can still keep on using the Java applet with EMS. So we didn't remove that functionality. We just facilitated the way that you don't need to support Java applets by using modern browsers, for example, like Chrome. Okay, so how did we actually facilitate that? What did we add? So in the Admin Control Center, in the Sentinel Admin Control Center, there was a new network configuration that was added here, as you can see in this screenshot. So if you go to configuration, network, now you can say to the Admin Control Center where is the location of the EMS URL, and this is the way, and this is why the Java applets are not being used. So we facilitated by the license manager now knows where is the URL of the EMS that is running on this application. Another thing that was added is that in the EMS configuration, you can you can rebrand your RTE So there was a new parameter that was introduced into the LDK EMS administration console where you can have to specify the actual EMS URL if you want to rebrand your RTE. Okay? And this looks like this. So this is the picture of the EMS console. You go to general configuration, and then you can see that the URL of the rebranded RTE should be specified here in the console. So I'm going to show you a demo that of the Java Applet free. I'm going to use my Chrome browser and show you EMS later on. I'm going to do some things like checking in or activating. So you see that now there's no need for a Java applet to run. So this all runs without Java applets. Okay. So going over to another subject, another feature that was added is the SL-UserMode activation changes. A couple of changes that were added in this version is, first of all, in terms of the user mode, if your browser still supports a Java applet, the user mode, the online activation still remains unchanged. Okay, but now if you're using the customer portal and you can use it without the Java in SL-UserMode, online activation is not supported actually in this release, only for the admin mode, not for the user mode. So in order to activate the user mode in the newer browsers, there are a couple of ways to do it. So as I said, we don't support the online activation, so you can select the offline activation if you want to activate. That's one option from the customer portal while activating the product. The other option is to use the RUS utility and to send the C2V and V2C. And the other option is also to use what we call the EMS Web Services API for activating user mode, SL-UserMode. Okay. So another very cool feature that was added, as I was discussing earlier, is we've added a new feature that allows you to detect better virtual machines clone detection. So there was a new feature that was introduced, and it's called VM Type 2. Mainly this new clone detection for virtual machine was added mainly to prevent attacks based on what we call rolling back a snapshot. So for example, I'll give you an example. If you're using a virtual machine and you allow the license to be run there, then for example, you could define a license, let's say of an execution or time-based, and you can consume some of the license. So you can, let's say you have an execution license for 100. Let's say you consume the 50, and if you reverse the snapshot, there's a good chance that the license will return to the way it was, and you will kind of have the kind of abuse the license, and you will have the first kind of a snapshot of what was the original license that you had. So now this new VM clone detection mechanism is coming to protect this scenario. It does that by actually acquiring the VM generation ID, the specific VM ID, and this is how, I mean, it also generates the protection based on that specific ID, and then it recognizes that that if there was a rolling back to another snapshot, that it recognized that, and the license is now going to be disabled according to that. If the system does not recognize that, it will fall back to the default VM protection type, which is called VM type 1, as you recall, and that protection type is mainly based on MAC address protection, and then CPU ID, and then what we call the UUID, which is the identifier of that specific image of that virtual machine. The support for this feature is mainly on virtual machines on Windows 8, 10, and server, especially virtual machines running under VMware, VMware Player, Workstation, and also on ESX and Hyper-V and Microsoft Azure. Okay. Okay, so another cool feature that I mentioned before is what we call the dynamic memory. the dynamic memory was introduced in EMS. As I said before, it was already existing in the product before, but only by using the API. So you can use the dynamic memory. The dynamic memory actually allows you to add more memory on top of the regular memory that you have in LDK. As you recall, the dynamic memory is only supported for HL keys only in driverless configuration, as you recall. The dynamic memory allows you, there are three kind of pieces. It allows you to define segments, memory segments. So there's a memory element that you can define, and these are memory segments. And it supports a different kind of memory. It supports read-only, read-write, or write-once memory types. So this is pretty cool, and I will show you guys in the demo after that how can I define a dynamic memory and how I can add this dynamic memory to multiple products that supports, of course, the HL keys in driverless configuration. So I'm going to show you that in the quick demo after that. So this is how you see the dynamic memory in EMS. So under catalog, you will see that there is a new tab that was added for the dynamic memory. And this is here, when you click new memory, you can define the dynamic memory segments and data. So in this example, they define the segment called test 1, and it has two segments, segment 1 and segment 2. And later on, this dynamic memory can be used while creating the product. So if you create a new product, you can add those segments. So you can see here, this is the memory segments that I've talked before. There's a segment 1 and segment 2. And this is how you define dynamic memory set. So you define the name and the file ID, and then you define the new memory segments in it. Once you do that, when you go to EMS and define the product in the product catalog, so you choose a product, and now you can go to the memory and add not just the default memory, you can add the dynamic memory and choose the dynamic memory segment that you've defined before. So in this case, it's the test 1, and add the dynamic memory to the product, and then burn the product on the HL driverless key. Okay, so having said that, I think I'm going to do a quick demo now. So I'm going to show a quick demo. I haven't seen if there are many questions yet, but after the demo, I can be open to, let's say, 2 or 3 questions. So I will show you, I will demonstrate now the the new EMS with the driverless. So I'm going to use Chrome as my browser. So, and then show you the new cool things that were added without the support for Java applets. So let me try and do that. Okay. So this is my virtual machine. This is my EMS LDK. Let me log in. So this is my 7.5 EMS LDK. And I'm going to work and show you a few things that I have here. So if you see, I will go to my admin control center, and you can see that I have currently 2 types of licenses. I have a license, an SL admin mode for the demo MA user code, and I have a Sentinel HL max key, a driverless key actually, that is connected to my admin control center. So what I want to show you is a quick thing, for example, that shows you that currently I'm going to use Chrome. So you can see this is a Chrome browser that does not need any Java applet support. So at the time, we can go to entitlements, and for example, at the time, if you want to check in C2V or check in a key, you would have to use and install the Java applets. But you can see here that I have the Chrome browser and I don't have the Java applet support. So just a quick note, if you want to check in a key, you can see here that I have this key, and if I click check in, usually it popped up the Java applet, but now you see, I'll click on check-in, and you will see that you will see all the features on my keys. You can see the memory, and you can see the features that are there that are introduced in a check-in, and you don't see it's being done without using any Java applets. So that's pretty cool. I think it's a nice addition to work in in modern browsers without installing those Java applets in EMS. So having said that, I wanted to demonstrate something for you. A couple of things I want to demonstrate. First of all, I want to talk about a little bit about the dynamic memory, as you recall. So if I'll go to catalog, you will see that dynamic memory section in EMS LDK. I will go to the dynamic memory. You can see I have one here, but I can deploy a new memory, so I can create a new dynamic memory. I will write Rafi dynamic memory number 2. You can define the file ID that this dynamic memory will belong to. You can define the number of bytes, and you can write anything else that you want. The memory type that you can define is a read-only, a read-write, a write-once, as I said. So after creating the new memory, I will define a segment in the memory. I can call it segment 1, and we'll define it with offset 0 and define it as 4 bytes. And I will write text, I will write demo, okay? And I will save. So you can see I have defined a new segment in my dynamic memory. It's a read-only memory segment, and I've defined the text with 4 bytes that contains the word demo. I can set up the number of bytes if I want, and once I do that, I can save the dynamic memory, and this can be used later on. So I've created in the dynamic memory, I have now 2 sets. I have Rafi dynamic memory and the new dynamic memory, and this is what I've defined in my EMS as part of the catalog. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new product, which is a dynamic memory product, and I'm going to assign that specific dynamic memory that I've produced before, and then I'm going to burn create the entitlement and burn it on the key. So let's do that. Let's create a new product. So I'll create a new product. I will call it demo. I'll call it demo dynamic memory product. And I will lock it to HL because the dynamic memory section works only in HL driverless key. And instead of adding, I can add the feature, but instead of that, I will go to the memory section, and instead of putting a read-write regular memory, I will go to the dynamic memory. Sorry, the dynamic memory is here. Once I clicked on the dynamic memory, I can actually add go to the segment of the dynamic memory that I already mentioned, and then I can add that specific segment and edit it. So if I want to configure and change it, I can still click on configure and change the text that I put for the 4-byte segment that I've defined. I will not change it this time, and I will save and complete the product. So once the demo dynamic memory product is being complete, what I can do is I can go and create an entitlement for that specific dynamic memory and burn that memory on my HL drive, on my Sentinel HL key. So I will create an entitlement. We'll call it test company, and I will add the product, and the product is called Rafi demo dynamic memory. So once I do that, essentially I can produce. So now I've created a product. The product is called I created an entitlement with a product which is called demo dynamic memory, and it's HL entitlement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn it on the key itself. So I'm going to click produce. Once I do that, you see I have the key attached, and it will let me burn that specific memory on the Sentinel HL Max, the driverless key, and I will click burn. So once I click burn, you see the license was burned successfully. Okay, And then when I go back to the entitlements, and I can go and check on the key which I just burned, so I can go and check in the key, and you can see here all the features that are inside the key, and you can see I have some memory which is the default memory which says data, but if I go to the dynamic memory, you can see I have two segments in the dynamic memory, one that I already burned before, and this is the second one which has this content of the data that I've just burned. Okay, and you can see the memory type is both read-only because these are the two memory segments that I burned before. Okay, so I think that was an example of, I kind of showed two main things that were added. I showed the way that you can play around with EMS without the Java applet, so using Chrome. I also showed you how the dynamic memory works and what's the advantage of it. So a little bit about dynamic memory. The dynamic memory has much more depth in it. So I mean, the regular memory is only until 4K, as you know, and the dynamic memory can support, much larger memory up to 25 kilobytes. So having said that, let's go back to the presentation, and I think I can kind of open the floor to some questions if there are any. So guys, if you want to have some questions, please write them on the chat board, and then I can answer like 2 or 3 questions right now, and then later on can answer some more questions at the end of the presentation. Ryan?
Thank you, Rafi. We did have a few questions that came through, and the first one is, could you explain a little bit more about the differences between dynamic memory and regular memory?
Okay, that's a great question. So as you know, as I demonstrated before, EMS LDK had historically the regular memory, the default memory segment that you had in most of the keys, and the SL keys. This default memory is mostly between 2 kilobytes and 4 kilobytes. The dynamic memory was added a few versions back, as I said, but was only accessed by the API. But now you can see, as you can see in the demo, that now it has access. So the main differences is that first of all, the dynamic memory is a much larger memory, so you can use it up to 25 kilobytes as a difference to 2K to 4 between 2 kilobyte to 4 kilobyte that the regular memory has. Another thing is that you need to remember is that currently the dynamic memory only works with HL and with driverless keys. So these are the kind of the main differences between those two types of memories.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. And the second question is, can you support different license models other than 90-day expiration date and unlocked products?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about it a bit later on in the presentation. Typically, historically, what we call an unlocked product or a trialware, which is a kind of a trial product that you can supply with the LDK. Typically and historically, it only had an expiration date of 90 days. What was introduced in 7.5 is the ability for unlocked product to have different license models. For example, you can have an unlocked product which is perpetual. And also, as I said before, you can also introduce, there was a new license model for unlocked products or for trialware that is an execution model. So you can set now the execution license model, but this is only through the API and not through the EMS GUI. Okay, so that's the main changes that were added and enhanced in 7.5 in the unlocked products.
Great, thank you. And that does it for the questions currently. And just as a reminder to continue to type in any further questions as we continue on through the presentation. And it's back to you, Rafi.
Absolutely. Great. So thank you guys, and please, if you have any more questions, and if you're reminded that you want to send, please write it in the chat box, and then I can relate or answer that at the end of the presentation. So let's go back to the presentation and talk about some additional features that were added in this version. So as I said, we're talking about the unlock, so it's a good segue to this slide. The feature zero duration with the unlock products is now easier to understand because now you have to have a module or a feature in the master key that allows you the ability to do the specific requirement for the unlock product. For example, if you want to use a time period until 90 days, you will have to have that unlock trialware feature in the master key, okay? If you want to do trialware or unlocked product for unlimited or perpetual, you will have to have the unlocked unlimited feature presented in the master key, and this is, I think, a payable feature, so you have to have that on the master key. And also, if you want to have both the unlocked trial and the unlocked limited features in the master key, then you will have both the unlimited perpetual and the time base. Okay, so this is the way that we've kind of organized the duration of unlocked products in the master key. So essentially, if you want a different type of unlocked products, you need to verify that this feature is indeed presenting in your master key. The model is on the master key that you buy from Gemalto. Okay. Okay, let's talk about some other features that were added. So as I said, we've introduced Runtimeless key support for Linux. Up until now, we had it, but not in Linux. So the integrated license manager, the Runtimeless license manager, is not supported on the Intel platform in Linux. It means that driverless keys configurations now unsupported without needing to install the actual runtime, or what we call the RTE. You know that if the license model is a concurrent license model or a network, it will still require to install the RTE, the license manager, or the runtime. So in case it's not a network or concurrency, you don't need to install it, but if you're using concurrency or network licensing model, then it will have to do it. You have to install the RTE. And of course, you can also support SL-UserMode under Linux by using API currently only at this stage. User mode, not admin mode. Okay. So that's what I wanted. That's what I mentioned earlier about the unlock products and the execution count. So we added the execution count license model to unlock products. Previously, we had only time and perpetual, so now an execution time license model has been added, and it's currently supported only using the license generator API and not through the EMS UI. And the maximum number of execution that can be consumed currently will be set to 30, and in the master key, as I mentioned before, you have to have the unlock trial module enabled in the master key to enable this feature of execution based in the unlock product. Okay, so this is a little bit more talking about some few items that were added in the API. So as I said before, in the HAS plugin scope, we've modified the API. So now there's a new tag which is called execution count to consume, and it allows you to consume actually a couple of executions or multiple of executions in one API call. So that's great because this feature really improves, the performance of the API, and reduces the read-write operations. At the past, if you had to, consume, for example, I don't know, 10 or 20 or 100 licenses, you had to call log in, log out every time, and now, this is a use case that was added before to support this login scope. So the use case means that, for example, we have an application, that securely, for example, erases the hard disk and charge one execution every one gigabyte. So if the hard disk consumes 1 gigabyte, it charges 1 executions. So let's say if it uses or erases 1 terabyte, you had to do the hasp login 1,000 login logout 1,000 times. Instead of that, now you can just call one API called the hasp login scope, and you set the execution count to consume to 1,000, and then you do this call in one API call. So it's much more efficient, and it improves performance. Okay. Another nice call that was added is the hasp login scope in the same kind of reasoning to consume network seats. So also at the past, we didn't have a single API that consume multiple network seats at one chat. So this API really allows you, the hasp login scope with the network seats to consume, and you set up the value there, allows you to consume multiple network seats also from an API. And once you do that, you can see the seats in the admin control center that are consumed through a session. And later on, these seats are returned to the pool when you do a logout call. Okay, so two nice APIs that were added to 7.5 to improve the performance during the hasp login scope API calls. Okay, so practically, I think we've talked about the new features of LDK 7.5, and these are the main. This is the summary of the main things that were introduced. As I said, one of the bigger things was the support for free for no need for Java Applet. So LDK EMS is now Java Applet free, and then you can use EMS with common and nice browsers like Google Chrome that don't have Applet. Java Applet supports. The second big thing that was introduced is now supports the support for Android, for mainly Intel, and we support native libraries. The third big item that was added was the support for Linux ARM using API, HL, and SL. There was a new clone detection mechanism scheme for virtual machine, the VM type 2 that I've discussed before, that allows you to protect and to identify clone detection when somebody takes a snapshot and reverse to a snapshot in his virtual machine. As I discussed earlier, we introduced the Runtimeless support for applications under Linux. And the last thing, the really nice thing and cool, is that we've added the support for the dynamic memory management now in EMS LDK, and you can define those dynamic memory segments and use them in the products, and also burn them with your keys. So these are kind of the main things that were introduced, and I think that we kind of went through them. So thank you guys for attending the session. I want to open the floor to some questions, if there are any. So we will do like about 5 minutes of questions. If there are any, please write them on the chat board. Ryan, to you.
Thank you, Rafi. At this time, I don't see any questions, so we'll give it another couple seconds to see if anything pops up. However, if not, this will conclude our question and answer session and the webinar. And of course, we would like to thank you for joining us. If you have any further questions, you may reply directly to the webinar email invitation, or you can email me directly at ryan.weidman@gemalto.com, which I am now sending in the chat box. And we haven't had any other questions come in, so at this time, it'll end the webinar. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.